No one sang when Ara was cast out. The full moon hung heavy above the valley, its light cutting through the mist like a blade. The pack had gathered at the border stones, their eyes hollow with judgment, their silence louder than any howl. Ara stood before them, barefoot on frost-hardened ground, her breath misting in the cold air. Alpha Draven's voice was final. "You are Omega without worth, a wolf that will not wake. You have no place among us." The gates closed behind her with a sound like thunder, and the forest beyond swallowed her whole. Before we begin, if you love dark Lycan kings, forbidden mates, and stories that make your heart ache, like this video, subscribe and step into the pack, because these stories only get deeper from here. Ara had always known she was different. While other children shifted under their first moon, learning to hunt and howl with the pack, Ara remained human. Her wolf was silent, dormant. Some said broken. The pack whispered that she carried a curse, that her bloodline was tainted, that she would never belong. Alpha Draven tolerated her only because her mother had once been a healer. But when her mother died, so did any mercy. Ara became invisible. She cleaned the common halls, tended the fires, and endured the cruelty of wolves who saw her as less than nothing. Omega, they called her. But even that title felt generous. On the night of her 20th year, Draven summoned her to the Great Hall. The pack elders sat in a crescent, their faces carved from stone. Draven's mate, Selene, watched with cold satisfaction. "Ara of no house," Draven said. "You have lived among us long enough, but you bring no strength, no bond, no future." Ara's throat tightened. She had known this day would come. "You are cast out. Leave before dawn or we will hunt you ourselves." The gates closed behind her. The pack's howls faded, and Ara stepped into the wilderness alone, carrying nothing but the clothes on her back and a heart that had learned to survive on scraps of hope. The Morven reaches were forbidden for a reason. Ancient law forbade wolves from crossing the boundary stones that marked the edge of packlands. Beyond lay a forest older than memory, a place where the trees grew tall and twisted, their roots sinking into soil that remembered the first wolves. Ara had no choice. She walked until her feet bled, until the cold bit through her thin cloak, until the sounds of the packlands faded into nothing. And then she felt it. A stirring. Deep inside her chest where her wolf had always slept. A faint pulse, like a heartbeat waking from a long dream. The forest seemed to shift around her. The trees leaned in, their branches whispering secrets in a language she almost understood. The air hummed with old magic, the kind that made her skin prickle and her breath catch. Something was watching her, not with malice, with curiosity, with recognition. Ara pressed forward, drawn by an instinct she couldn't name. The moon guided her through the dark, its light painting silver pathways across the moss-covered ground. And then, in a clearing ringed by standing stones, she saw it. A tomb. The sarcophagus was carved from black stone, its surface etched with symbols that glowed faintly in the moonlight. Vines had grown over it, thick and ancient, but they parted easily when Ara reached out. She shouldn't touch it. She knew that instinctively, but her wolf stirred again, stronger this time, and her hand moved before her mind could stop it. The moment her fingers brushed the stone, warmth flooded through her. The symbols flared bright, burning away centuries of dust and decay. And then she saw the seal. A moon, full and radiant, carved into the lid. Around it, words in the old tongue. Ara couldn't read them, but she understood their meaning. Here lies the first blood, the Alpha King, sealed by moon and council, bound by fate, waiting for the one who will break the chains. Ara's heart pounded. This was wrong. She should leave. She should run. But then she stumbled, catching herself on the edge of the sarcophagus. A sharp stone cut her palm, and blood welled bright and red. One drop fell. It struck the moon seal, and the world exploded with light. The seal cracked with a sound like breaking ice. Ara fell back, her hand pressed to her chest as power rolled over her in waves. The sarcophagus lid groaned, then shifted, sliding aside with the weight of centuries. And he rose. The Alpha King was larger than any wolf Ara had ever seen. Even in human form, his presence was overwhelming. His skin was pale from long sleep, his hair dark as midnight, his eyes the color of molten gold. Scars marked his chest and arms, silver against his skin, and when he looked at her, the world seemed to stop. "You," he said, his voice rough with disuse. "You are the one." Era couldn't move, couldn't speak. The air between them crackled with something she didn't understand, something that made her wolf howl inside her chest. He stepped from the tomb, barefoot on the cold ground, and crossed the space between them in 2 strides. He reached out, his hand hovering just above her face, and she felt the pull. The bond. It snapped into place like a chain, like a promise, like a song she'd heard in dreams. "Mate," he said, wonder and disbelief warring in his voice. Era shook her head, stumbling back. "No, that's impossible. I'm nobody. I'm just—" "You were always meant to wake me," he said, and his eyes burned with certainty. "I have waited 1,000 years for you, little Omega." His hand dropped. His expression softened, just barely. "My name is Kaelin. I am the last of the first blood alphas, and you, my fated one, have just shattered the seal that kept me from the world." Ara's legs gave out. She sank to the ground, her mind spinning. This couldn't be real, this couldn't be happening. But when Kaelin knelt beside her, when his warmth surrounded her like a shield, she felt something she had never felt before. Safety. Kaelin did not sleep that first night. He sat by the fire Ara built, watching her with an intensity that made her skin burn. "Tell me," she said finally, unable to bear the silence. "What are the first blood alphas?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice low and weighted with memory. "We were the first of our kind, born when the moon herself walked the earth. Our power was absolute. We could command any wolf, bend nature to our will, live for centuries without aging." His eyes reflected the firelight. But power like that comes at a cost. It consumes, it corrupts, and the councils of the modern age feared us. Ara pulled her knees to her chest. "So they sealed you away!" "They tried to kill me first," Kaelin said simply, "but you cannot kill what the moon has blessed. So they bound me instead, used a ritual older than their laws to put me in a sleep that should have been eternal." "Why you?" Ara asked. "If there were others—" "I was the last," Kaelin said. "The others fell to war, to betrayal, to their own power. I survived because I refused to use my strength the way they wanted. I refused to rule through fear." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Era felt stripped bare. "The prophecy said I would wake only for my true mate, the one whose blood could break the seal. I did not believe it." His voice softened. "But here you are." "The council called themselves the Silver Veil," Kaelin said, his hands clenching into fists. "They were the elders of the strongest packs, united in their fear of what I represented." Ara listened, transfixed. "They came to me under the guise of peace, said they wanted to honor the first blood, to learn from me. I was a fool to trust them." His voice turned cold. "They brought me to a sacred grove and began a ritual. Said it would strengthen the bond between the old ways and the new. But it was a lie. They meant to drain my power, to consume it and make themselves gods." "What stopped them?" Ara asked. "The moon," Kaelin said. "She intervened, twisted their ritual into a seal instead. But the damage was done. I was bound, frozen, locked away from the world I was meant to protect." He turned to Ara, his eyes burning. "And they twisted the mate prophecy, made it seem like my mate would be the key to stealing my power. That's why they hunted anyone who might be destined for me." Era's blood ran cold. They're still out there. Yes, Kaelin said, and they will come for us. Over the next days, Kalin began to recover his strength. But something was wrong. Era felt it every time he came near. A pull, yes, but also a pain, a resistance, as if her body was fighting the bond instead of accepting it. Kaelin noticed too. She could see it in the way he watched her, the way he kept his distance, the frustration that darkened his expression. Why does it hurt? Ara asked one evening, her voice barely a whisper. Kaelin's jaw tightened. I don't know. A bond should feel natural, like coming home, but this... He gestured between them. This feels incomplete. Ara pressed a hand to her chest, where the bond thrummed like a wounded thing. Is it because I'm Omega? Because my wolf won't wake? No, Kaelin said firmly. Omega, Beta, Alpha, it doesn't matter. The moon chooses based on soul, not rank. He stepped closer, and Ara flinched. Not from fear, from the sharp, stabbing sensation that lanced through her chest. Kaelin stopped immediately, his expression tortured. I won't hurt you, he said, even if it means keeping my distance. But Era could see the cost, could feel it in the bond between them. He was her mate, and yet they were trapped on opposite sides of an invisible wall. We'll figure it out, Era said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. They found shelter in the ruins of an ancient keep, its walls crumbling but still strong enough to provide protection. Kaelin hunted while Ara gathered herbs and firewood, and slowly, carefully, they began to build something like trust. Ara learned that Kaelin was not the monster the stories made him out to be. He was thoughtful, careful, even gentle when he thought she wasn't watching. He taught her about the old ways, about the magic that flowed through the earth, about the songs the wolves used to sing under the full moon. And Kaelin learned that Era was stronger than she looked, that she had survived years of cruelty with her spirit intact, that she was kind even when kindness had never been shown to her. One night, as they sat by the fire, Kaelin spoke softly. You should not have been cast out. You are more wolf than any of them. Ara smiled, bitter and sad. I can't even shift. You will, Kaelin said, when you're ready, when you stop fearing what you are. Era wanted to believe him, but before she could respond, Kaelin stiffened. His head snapped toward the forest, his eyes glowing gold. They're here, he said. Who? Hunters, Kaelin growled, from the Silver Veil. Era's blood turned to ice. They found us. Kaelin rose, power radiating from him like heat. Stay behind me. But Ara knew, deep in her bones, that hiding would not save them. The hunt had begun. The hunters came at dawn. 6 wolves, massive and scarred, their eyes cold with purpose. They circled the ruins, cutting off escape, and the largest of them shifted into a man with silver hair and a cruel smile. Kaelin, first blood, he said. The council has waited long for your return. Kaelin stood between them and Ara, his power a palpable force. You will not touch her. The hunter laughed. We don't want her. We want you. But if she's in the way, he shrugged. Collateral damage. Kaelin's growl shook the earth. Run, Ara. No, Era said, stepping forward. I'm not leaving you. The hunter's eyes gleamed. How touching. The fated mate. The prophecy fulfilled. Too bad she's not strong enough to complete the bond. Kaelin's control snapped. He lunged, power exploding from him, and the battle began. But there were too many. Even weakened, Kaelin was devastating. But the hunters were trained, coordinated. They drove him back, step by step, until he stood bleeding before them. And then he looked at Ara. Forgive me, he said. Before she could ask what he meant, Kaelin moved faster than thought. He pulled her to him, his teeth finding her throat, and he marked her. The bond snapped into place like a lightning strike. For one perfect moment, Ara felt whole, connected, complete. And then the pain began. Ara screamed, her body convulsed, power flooding through her veins like fire. The bond fractured, splintering into 1,000 pieces, and she collapsed. Kaelin caught her, horror written across his face. No! No, no, no! The hunters fled, confused and afraid of what they had witnessed. But Kaelin barely noticed. He held Ara as she writhed in agony, his mark burning on her skin, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the Alpha King felt true fear. Ara woke 3 days later. She felt hollow, weak, as if something vital had been carved out of her chest. Kaelin sat beside her, his face haggard, his eyes shadowed with guilt. "You're awake," he said, relief flooding his voice. Ara tried to sit up and gasped. Her body felt like it had been shattered and poorly reassembled. "What happened?" Kaelin's jaw clenched. "The mark, it's draining you." "What?" Ara looked down at her shoulder, where Kaelin's mark was etched into her skin. It was beautiful, intricate, but it pulsed with a sickly light. "My power is too strong," Kaelin said, his voice breaking. "It's killing you." Ara stared at him. "But you're my mate." "Yes," Kaelin said, "and I'm destroying you." Over the following days, Kaelin kept his distance. He wouldn't touch her, wouldn't even look at her for too long. Ara could feel him retreating, pulling back from the bond, trying to protect her the only way he knew how. But it was agony. The incomplete bond was worse than no bond at all. It thrummed between them, broken and bleeding, and Ara felt herself growing weaker with each passing hour. "There has to be a way," Ara said one night, her voice thin. Kaelin shook his head. "I've searched every memory, every scrap of knowledge. There's nothing. The mark cannot be undone." "Then we find another way," Ara insisted. But Kaelin wouldn't meet her eyes, and Ara realized with growing horror that he had already made his decision. He was going to leave her. The Silver Veil was not finished with them. Ara woke one night to find Kaelin standing at the edge of the ruins, his body tense. "They're coming," he said. "More of them this time." "How many?" "Too many." Ara forced herself to stand, ignoring the weakness in her limbs. "Then we fight." "You can't fight," Kaelin said harshly. "You can barely stand." "Then what do you suggest?" Ara shot back. Kaelin turned to her, his eyes full of pain. "I surrender. I give them what they want, and you go free." "No," Ara said immediately. "Absolutely not." "It's the only way." "It's not," Ara insisted. "We're stronger together. We just need to figure out—" A voice cut through the night. "How noble." The same silver-haired hunter stepped from the shadows, flanked by a dozen others. His smile was sharp. "The Alpha King, willing to sacrifice himself for his broken mate. The council will be pleased." "What does the council want with him?" Ara demanded. The hunter's eyes gleamed. "His blood, his power. Combined with the bond of a fated mate, it will make us immortal, gods among wolves." Ara's stomach dropped. "That's why you want him alive." "Precisely," the hunter said. "The ritual requires him conscious, willing or not." He gestured to Kaelin. "Come peacefully, and we'll let the girl live." Kaelin took a step forward. "Don't," Ara whispered. "I have to," Kaelin said. "It's you or the world, and I choose you." The hunters moved to take him, and Ara's world shattered. Ara ran, not away from the hunters, toward something she'd seen days earlier. An ancient library hidden in the roots of a massive tree, filled with books older than memory. If there was an answer, it would be there. She tore through the texts, her hands shaking, her vision blurring. And then she found it. The Chronicle of Soul Bonds. Her eyes scanned the pages frantically, and there, written in fading ink, was the truth. A bond between souls is not measured by strength, but by acceptance. If one soul fears the other, if one heart is closed, the bond cannot complete. It will fracture, it will drain, it will kill. Ara's breath caught. But if the closed heart opens, if the fearful soul embraces its fate, the bond will heal. It will become unbreakable. Ara pressed the book to her chest, tears streaming down her face. She was the one blocking the bond. Not because she was weak, not because she was Omega, but because she was afraid. Afraid of the power, afraid of what it meant to be loved, afraid of losing herself. Her wolf had been silent because Ara had kept her caged, and now Kaelin was going to die because of it. Era closed her eyes, took a breath, and made a choice. Era returned to the ruins and found the place empty. The hunters had taken Kaelin, but she knew where they were going. The sacred grove, where the silver veil had tried to kill Kaelin 1,000 years ago. Ara began the journey, her body weak but her resolve unshakable, and as she walked, she thought about her wolf. Omegas rarely shifted. It was known. But why? The answer came to her slowly, like dawn breaking. Omegas were not weak, they were cautious. They held their power close, protected it, because they had learned that the world was dangerous. Ara had been hurt so many times, rejected, cast out, broken down. Her wolf had retreated, not from weakness, but from self-preservation. But now Ara understood. Her wolf had never abandoned her. She had been waiting for Ara to be ready, waiting for Ara to stop being afraid. "I'm ready," Ara whispered to the wind. "I'm ready now." Deep inside her chest, something stirred. Her wolf opened one golden eye and smiled. Ara's transformation began slowly. Power unfurled inside her like a flower blooming, but it wasn't the wild, violent power of most wolves. It was something older, something pure. Old light. She remembered what Kaelin had told her, about the first wolves blessed by the moon herself, about the healers who could mend bones with a touch, who could sing life back into dying things. Ara was one of them. Her gift had been dormant, suppressed by fear and pain. But now it rose, bright and fierce, and Ara gasped as it filled every corner of her being.
She understood now why the bond had hurt. Her power and Kaelin's were not meant to blend. They were meant to balance, light and dark, healer and warrior, moon and shadow. But Ara's light had been too afraid to shine, not anymore. She lifted her hands and watched as silver light danced across her palms. Her wolf pressed close, their minds finally merging, and Ara felt whole for the first time in her life. "Let's go get him," she said to her wolf. Her wolf howled in agreement. But first, Ara had to do something terrifying. She had to face herself. She sat in a clearing, the moon full above her, and closed her eyes. Her wolf waited patiently, ready to guide her. "I'm afraid," Ara admitted. "I'm afraid of being powerful. I'm afraid people will hurt me because of it. I'm afraid I'll lose myself." Her wolf nuzzled her gently. "You will never lose yourself. I am you. You are me. We are one." "But what if I'm not enough?" Ara whispered. "What if I can't save him?" "You already have," her wolf said, "by choosing to try." Ara opened her eyes. Tears streamed down her face, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of release. She had spent her whole life trying to be small, trying to be invisible, trying to survive. But survival was not the same as living. "I choose power," Ara said to the moon. "I choose love. I choose me." The moon answered. Light exploded from Ara's body, silver and blinding. Her bones shifted, her form changed, and for the first time in her life, Ara embraced her wolf. The shift was not painful. It was transcendent. Ara's wolf was not large or intimidating. She was sleek and graceful, her fur the color of moonlight, her eyes bright as stars. But her presence was undeniable. Power radiated from her like heat, and the forest bowed in recognition. Ara threw back her head and howled. The sound echoed across the mountains, through the valleys, into every packland for miles. It was a song of awakening, of reclamation, of a wolf who had been silent far too long. And in the sacred grove, miles away, Kaelin heard it. He was bound to an altar, silver chains cutting into his skin, surrounded by the silver veil. The ritual had begun, their chanting filling the air, their knives gleaming in the firelight. But when Ara's howl reached him, Kaelin smiled. "She's coming," he said. The hunters exchanged nervous glances. "Let her come," the silver-haired leader said. "She's just an Omega." Kalen's smile widened. She was never just anything. And then the earth began to shake. The silver veil had prepared for this moment for centuries. The sacred grove was alight with torches, the ground carved with sigils of binding and draining. Kalen was chained at the center, his blood already spilling into grooves that fed the ritual. 12 council members stood in a circle, their voices rising in the old tongue, calling upon powers they barely understood. "With this blood we claim dominion," they chanted. "With this bond we ascend." Kalen's vision blurred. He could feel his power being pulled from him, thread by thread, feeding the hunger of the ritual. The bond with Era pulsed weakly, a dying star in his chest. He had failed her. The silver-haired leader stepped forward, a ceremonial blade in his hand. "And now, the final cut. The bond must be severed for the power to transfer." He raised the blade, and the forest exploded. Ara came like a storm. She burst from the tree line in her wolf form, silver light trailing behind her like a comet. The hunters barely had time to react before she was among them, moving with speed and grace that defied belief. She was not a fighter, but her wolf was a force of nature. One hunter lunged at her. Ara's light flared and he was thrown back, his body crashing into a tree. Another tried to bite her and she twisted, her teeth finding his throat, ending him quickly. The silver-haired leader snarled, "Kill her!" But the pack wolves, the ones forced to serve the silver veil, hesitated. They could feel it now, the power radiating from Ara, the authority in her presence. She was not prey. She was apex. Ara reached the altar and shifted back to human form, her body glowing with old light. She met Kalen's eyes, and he saw everything there. Love, forgiveness, determination. "Hold on," she said. She placed her hands on his chest, and her light poured into him. The chains shattered, the sigils burned away, and Kalen felt his power return in a rush. But more than that, he felt the bond. Complete. Whole. Perfect. Ara had opened her heart, and the bond had healed. The silver veil attacked as one. But they were too late. Kalen rose, his power restored, and beside him, Ara blazed like a second sun. The bond between them thrummed with energy, light and shadow intertwining, creating something new, something unstoppable. "You wanted the bond's power," Kalen said, his voice carrying across the grove. "Let me show you what it truly is." He reached for Ara, and she took his hand without hesitation. Their power merged, creating a shock wave that rippled through the earth. The hunters screamed as the ritual backfired. The power they'd tried to steal turned on them, consuming them, burning them from the inside out. Only the silver-haired leader remained, on his knees, his face twisted with rage and fear. "Impossible," he gasped. "You were broken. The bond was killing her." "She was never broken," Kalen said. "She was becoming." Ara stepped forward. She knelt before the hunter, her eyes glowing with old light. "I forgive you," she said softly, "but you will never hurt anyone again." She touched his forehead and he collapsed, unconscious, stripped of his power, made mortal. Mercy, not vengeance. Kalen looked at her with wonder. "You didn't kill him." "I'm a healer," Ara said simply. "Even now." Then she turned to Kalen, her expression soft. "Your turn." Kalen understood. The mark had been one-sided, incomplete. But now... Ara shifted, her silver wolf emerging, and she approached him. Kalen bared his throat, submitting to his mate, and Ara marked him. The bond sang. It was not a chain. It was a song, a dance, a promise between equals. When Ara shifted back, her mark glowed on Kalen's skin, silver to match his gold. Two halves of one whole. "Alpha Queen," Kalen said, dropping to one knee. "My equal, my mate, my light." Ara pulled him to his feet. "No kneeling," she said. "We stand together." And the moon, watching from above, blessed them both.
They did not return to the packlands. Word spread quickly. The silver veil had fallen, the Alpha King had risen, and beside him walked an Omega who was Omega no more. Ara became known as the Alpha Queen of Old Light. Wolves came from across the territories to seek her judgment, her healing, her wisdom. She built a new kind of pack, one where rank meant nothing and strength was measured by character. Kaelin ruled beside her, not above her. He was the sword, she was the shield. He was the darkness that protected. She was the light that healed. Together they were unbeatable. On the night of the full moon, 1 year after Ara had broken the seal, they stood on a cliff overlooking the territories they had united. "Do you ever regret it?" Kaelin asked. "Waking me?" Ara laughed. "Every day." He looked at her, startled, and she grinned. "I'm joking, mostly." She turned to him, her eyes soft. "I was cast out because I had no wolf, no worth, no future." She took his hand. "But I was never rejected by fate, only delayed." Kaelin pulled her close. The moon knew what she was doing. "She usually does," Era agreed, and then she tipped her head back and howled. Her voice rose to the stars, clear and strong, and across the territories thousands of wolves answered. Not because they feared her, because they loved her. Kaelin added his voice to hers, and their song became one, a promise to each other, a promise to the packs who followed them. The rejected Omega had become a queen, and the Alpha King had finally found home. 3 months after the fall of the Silver Veil, a stranger came to their territory. She arrived on a moonless night, wrapped in robes that shimmered like starlight. No one saw her approach. No guards sensed her presence. She simply appeared in the great hall, where Ara and Kalin sat reviewing territory disputes. Kaelin was on his feet instantly, power flaring. "Who are you?" The woman lowered her hood, revealing a face that was ageless and ancient, beautiful and terrible. Her eyes were silver, her hair white as moonlight, and when she smiled, the room grew cold. "I am many things," she said, "but tonight I am the moon's emissary." Era's blood ran cold. "The moon sent you?" "She has been watching you," the woman said. "Both of you, with great interest." Kaelin stepped in front of Ara protectively. "What does she want?" The emissary's smile widened. "To collect on a debt." She gestured, and the air shimmered. An image formed, showing Ara's blood falling on the moon's seal the moment she'd freed Kaelin. "When you broke the seal, Era of Old Light, you invoked ancient magic. Magic that requires payment." Era's hands clenched. "What kind of payment?" "A choice," the emissary said. "The moon gave you power beyond measure. She woke your wolf, healed your bond, made you queen, but such gifts come at a cost." She turned to Kaelin. "And you, First Blood, you were meant to sleep forever. The moon allowed you to wake, to love, to rule, but the balance must be maintained." Kaelin's jaw tightened. "What are you saying?" "One of you must return to sleep," the emissary said simply. "For 100 years. The other will rule alone, will age, will watch the decades pass while their mate dreams." Ara felt the world tilt. "No. It is the price of breaking fate's design," the emissary said. 100 years of separation. Or," her eyes glittered, "both of you can return to sleep, together, forever. The packs will manage without you." "That's not a choice," Kaelin growled. "That's a punishment." "It is balance," the emissary corrected. "You have upset the natural order. Now order must be restored." Ara stepped forward, her chin raised. "And if we refuse both options?" The emissary's expression turned cold. "Then the moon will take back what she gave. Your wolf will sleep again, Ara. Your bond will shatter, and Kaelin will return to his tomb, conscious this time, aware and alone for eternity." The silence that followed was suffocating. Kaelin reached for Era's hand. "There has to be another way." "There is always another way," the emissary said softly. but it requires sacrifice of a different kind. "Tell us," Ara demanded. The emissary circled them slowly, like a predator evaluating prey. "The moon is not cruel. She is curious. She has watched wolves for millennia, but she has never seen a bond quite like yours." She stopped before them. "An alpha king who chooses mercy, an omega queen who chooses power, light and shadow perfectly balanced. You are unprecedented." "What does that mean?" Kaelin asked. "It means she is willing to make a different bargain," the emissary said, "one that has never been offered before." She raised her hand and moonlight coalesced into a silver thread, glowing and ethereal. "This is a tether, a direct connection to the moon herself. If you accept it, you will become her champions, her voice in the mortal world." Ara stared at the thread. "What would that mean?" "When the moon needs you, you will answer," the emissary said. "When darkness threatens to consume the wolf territories, you will stand against it. When ancient evils wake, you will be the first line of defense." Kaelin's eyes narrowed. "You're asking us to become soldiers." "I am asking you to become legends," the emissary corrected. "You will face dangers beyond imagining, creatures from before the first wolves, magic that could tear reality apart. You will fight battles that no one will ever know about in places that exist between heartbeats." She let the weight of her words settle. "But you will face them together. Your bond will strengthen with each trial. And when your service is complete, when the moon is satisfied, you will be released, free to live out your lives in peace." "How long?" Era asked. "How long would we serve?" The emissary smiled. "That depends on you. Could be decades, could be centuries. Time moves differently in the moon's service." Ara looked at Kaelin. His jaw was set, his eyes burning with barely contained fury. But beneath that she felt his fear, his desperation to protect her. "Or," the emissary continued, "one of you sleeps for 100 years. A guaranteed separation, but a known cost. The choice is yours." Kaelin pulled Era aside, his voice low. "We can't trust this. She could be lying. The moon could use us and never let us go." "Maybe," Ara said. "But what's the alternative? One of us loses a century. Our bond weakens from the distance. The packs lose both their leaders because the one left behind will be broken." Kaelin's hands trembled as he cupped her face. "I won't let them take you from me. Not again. Not ever." "Then we fight," Ara said simply. "Together, like we always have." She turned to the emissary. "We accept the tether. We'll be the moon's champions." The emissary's smile was radiant and terrifying. "So be it." The silver thread shot forward, splitting in two. One strand wrapped around Ara's wrist, the other around Kaelin's. The moment they touched skin, power exploded through them. Ara gasped. She could feel the moon now, not just as a distant presence, but as a living force. Ancient, vast, watching. And she could feel something else. A tide of darkness far to the north, something stirring, something hungry. Kaelin felt it too. His eyes met hers, and she saw understanding there. Their first trial was already waiting. The emissary stepped back, her form beginning to fade. "Your service begins now. In the northern wastes, an ancient seal has been broken. What sleeps there has not seen the sun in 3,000 years. Stop it before it reaches the packlands." "Wait!" Era called. "What is it? What are we fighting?" The emissary's voice echoed as she disappeared. "A devourer. The first predator of wolves. The reason your ancestors learned to fear the dark." And then she was gone. Ara and Kaelin stood in the silent hall, silver threads glowing on their wrists, the weight of their choice settling over them. "We're going to regret this," Kaelin said quietly. Ara laughed, sharp and bright. "Probably, but at least we'll regret it together." She shifted into her silver wolf, and Kaelin followed, his form massive and dark. They stood side by side, two halves of a perfect whole, and the bond between them sang with purpose. They had been rejected, sealed, broken, and reborn. Now they would become something new. Not just Alpha King and Queen, champions of the moon, guardians of the balance, legends whispered in the dark. Ara threw back her head and howled, and Kaelin's voice joined hers. The sound echoed across the territories, a promise and a warning. They were coming, and the darkness should be afraid. Together they ran north, into the unknown, into danger, into destiny. The rejected Omega and the frozen King, racing toward their first battle as the moon's chosen. And high above, the moon watched them go, a smile in her silver light. She had chosen well. The end. She was never rejected by fate, only delayed. And he was never meant to sleep forever, only to wait for the one who would wake him. Together they rewrote destiny, and the moon blessed their union with trials that would forge them into legends. This is their story, but their journey has only just begun.